It's been a long off season without football, but FanDuel has spent it getting into the best shape of their lives. That means this. FanDuel is ready for more. More ways to play, more ways to challenge your friends, and most importantly, more ways to win. FanDuel also has new options for playing daily fantasy with your friends, because the only thing better than winning cash is winning your friends cash. Right now, you can get a $20 bonus when you make your first deposit on FanDuel. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Stephen A. Age and state restrictions apply.
Message and data rates may apply.
When did it become okay for men to be lazier, softer, fatter? We need to bring the men of this country back to greatness. And it's easier than ever with Ageless Male Max, a patent-pending formula with an ingredient that helps boost your total testosterone, promoting greater increases in muscle size and twice the reduction of body fat percentage than exercise alone. Plus, an amazing 64% increase in nitric oxide, which can be handy in the gym and in the bedroom. Take your manhood to the max by trying your first 30-day bottle free. Just pay shipping and handling. Not 10 days, not 15 days, but a full 30-day supply free when you text the word LIFT to 797979. Finally, a formula that boosts total testosterone. If your results with Ageless Male Max are too intense, please decrease use. For your free bottle, text LIFT to 797979. Text LIFT to 797979.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80, not to mention now simulcast live on ESPN News every weekday from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. Feel free to join me. Look, a couple of things we need to get into. We need to get this out of the way right now. I want to make sure that everybody understands my position. To reiterate and regurgitate some of the things that I said yesterday about Odell Beckham Jr.'s new deal with the New York Giants, $95 million, $65 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Odell Beckham Jr. deserves his money, every penny. He's box office. He's the real deal. He's legitimately and bona fide as an individual you walk through the turnstiles to watch and see play. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said this all the time. I'll say this in my industry. I've said this in any industry, and I'll stand by that right now. All talent is not the same. People are different. That's the beauty of capitalism. People are different. There are those who are subpar. There are those who are average. There are those who are great. There are those who are phenomenal. And then there are those who are box office. And sometimes you have people who are relatively box office and they're good but not great. But they're box office for a different reason. Any way you slice it, people look for different reasons to be monetized. Somehow, some way, when you can attach yourself to the qualification as a revenue generator, you've positioned yourself to get paid. Odell Beckham Jr. has happened to have done that with his play as well as some of his eccentric tendencies. So the reality is clear. This brother's box office, he deserves his money. I'm in complete support of it, period. Having said all of that, I'll say to you what I said yesterday. He's not the best wide receiver in football. That happens to be Antonio Brown for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't care what anybody says. You have one playoff appearance on your resume where you were targeted 11 times. You caught 4 passes for 28 yards at Lambeau Field in Green Bay in a playoff game that you lost. And the week of the playoff game, albeit an off day and obviously in no violation whatsoever of team rules, you were still chilling on a boat with a bunch of fellas in South Beach. The week of a game, the Monday before that game. You flew back, you worked hard, you handled your business, but you wasn't ready to go because you dropped a few passes in that playoff game against Green Bay. That's the reality. These are the facts. And when we look at Antonio Brown and the kind of resume that this man has on his docket, what is there to talk about here? Y'all want to act like production doesn't matter. I got news for you. It does matter. It provides proof. It's evidence. as to what your value is. Antonio Brown, last season, 101 receptions, 1,533 yards. Over the last 5 seasons, 110, 129, 136, 106, and 101 receptions. The yardage, 1,499, 1,698, 1,834, 1,284, 1,533. That's Antonio Brown. That's Antonio Brown. Did I get to the playoffs? Career-wise, over 6 seasons, 51 receptions, 837 yards. That's Antonio Brown. So let's stop the nonsense here. We got to start calling it like we see it. I've got to do my top 5 receivers. I'm telling you right now. It's Antonio Brown. It's Julio Jones. It's Odell Beckham Jr. It's DeAndre Hopkins. And then the 5th guy that you want to throw in the mix, it could be Devontae Adams. It could be Mike Evans. It could be a few cats out there. It could be Keenan Allen. It could be a few brothers out there. Fine, throw them all in there. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. You want to tell me that Devontae Adams should be thrown on the list? Because guess what? Aaron Rodgers no longer has Jordy Nelson on the squad, and he's going to throw that ball to Devontae Adams? Okay. I'll believe it when I see it. You want to tell me that Deshaun Watson is going to stay healthy and be that stud and DeAndre Hopkins' stock is going to elevate? I believe it. Let's see it happen. You want to tell me Mike Evans is going to be that stud? I ain't questioning Mike Evans, but a wide receiver, last time I checked, can't throw the ball to himself. He needs a quarterback to do that. And his guy is going to be suspended for at least the first 3 games. For stuff that I don't feel like bringing up right now. We all know what Jameis Winston's checkered past includes. So all of that going on, these are impediments. These are impediments. You don't get around that. It's just the reality of the situation. It's inescapable. And since that's the reality, let's deal with what's real. Odell Beckham Jr. deserves his money. But when you're the highest paid receiver in the game and the belief is that you're the best in the game, I need more of a resume. So I hope and I believe that Odell Beckham Jr. will do this. I believe he will go out there hell-bent on proving that he's worth every penny that he's just gotten. And I think he's going to show up and show out. And I applaud the New York Giants for stepping up and taking care of his business. This brother's a box office attraction in the media capital of the world. And the money they have available to them, everybody don't have the same liquidity that the Giants have. You took care of this man. Now let's see the Raiders take care of Khalil Mack like they should. Now let's see the Los Angeles Rams take care of Aaron Donald like they should. Now let's see the Pittsburgh Steelers take care of Le'Veon Bell, which they won't do, but they should do. I got to be protective of my voice. I still got that voice issue from yesterday. But I'm just saying, if we're going to be real about it, can we please be real about it? If we're going to say we're going to be real about it, let's actually do it. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. And oh, by the way, a couple of statistics. Over the last 3 seasons, Odell Beckham Jr. played in 35 games, 222 receptions over those 35 games, averaging 89 yards, had 26 touchdowns. More touchdowns than anybody but, he had 26 touchdowns. I apologize. Julio Jones, same period of time, 11 more games, 9 less touchdowns, but had 307 receptions to Odell Beckham Jr.'s 222. DeAndre Hopkins, over the same 3 seasons, 12 more games than Odell Beckham Jr., 285 receptions, averaging 82 reception yards per game, 28 touchdowns, 2 more than Odell Beckham Jr. Antonio Brown, 10 more games than Odell Beckham Jr. Over those 10 games, 121 more receptions at 343. Average yards receptions, Odell Beckham Jr. at 89, Antonio Brown at 103, and touchdowns at 31. Anywhere you slice it, any category you want to pick up, Antonio Brown's the man. That's all I'm trying to say. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. That's one item I wanted to get into. What's the other item? Jerry Jones, owner for the Dallas Cowboys, making news again. After his Dallas Cowboys committed 8 turnovers Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals in a snooze fest, Jerry Jones spoke to Tim Cowlishaw of the Dallas Morning News. Quote, I made the presentation. You can see how I did. End quote. Jones actually believes that a longer regular season and a shorter training camp preseason will result in fewer, not more concussions. He says, quote, I can make the case that we have an uptick in concussions in the preseason, Jones said. If you look at it, I would contend there would be less exposure. There also would be more money, a lot more money. It will provide more than $1 billion to the players, Jones said. It's certainly worth considering. It would direct more value for what the players expend to the players. Ladies and gentlemen, grab a hold of your seatbelt. I 1,000% agree with Jerry Jones. The preseason should be lessened. The regular season should be extended. And as far as I'm concerned, and it's a simple reason. When you're out there as a football player, it's costing you anyway. Practice on that turf, cutting, jabbing, tackling, etc. You're putting yourself through the physical exertion anyway. You're doing it anyway. So if that's what you're going to do, why don't you do it when the games count? And if there's more money, because the regular season games are obviously worth more than preseason games, and you're jeopardizing your health, your well-being, and your career during preseason and practice, why not minimize practice? Why not minimize preseason games? And if it dilutes the product to some degree, ladies and gentlemen, that's only the first few weeks of the season. That's only the first few weeks of the season. So what? You got to look at guys look a little bit sloppy. So what? You got to look at guys not look, like their A games are there with them. So what? The games should count more often. 18-game regular season. Now you got people that I know, they don't believe that. They believe do away with the preseason, keep the 16 games, have 2 bye weeks in the season, and probably extend a playoff team in each conference to 8 games as opposed to 6. No, I'm opposed to that. I'm saying, make the regular season 18 games. Make the regular season count that much more. But in the same breath, you're not really jeopardizing anyone from an extra perspective because, again, ladies and gentlemen, they're jeopardizing themselves anyway when they practice. This is football. It's almost like boxing. You ain't shadow boxing. If somebody is punching you upside the head just because it ain't in front of a live audience on pay-per-view doesn't mean you ain't getting knocked upside your head. So if you got to go through and endure this stuff anyway, you might as well make it count more, have more money thrown into the coffers of all of that, and call it a day. That's what you might as well do. That's what I would do. I wouldn't hesitate. This is a no-brainer. Jerry Jones is 1,000% correct on this issue. Plain and simple. The preseason should be completely eradicated as far as I'm concerned. But if you want to keep it 2 weeks, fine. But outside of that, let's get down to these games, baby. 18 games. 18 games. I completely and wholeheartedly agree with Jerry Jones. Y'all got me agreeing with Jerry Jones for crying out loud. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. I completely agree with this man. When he's right, he's right. On a different subject that's far more sensitive, I wanted to transition before we go to break to something that's on my mind. Because yesterday on my television show, First Take on ESPN, we discussed the topic of Tiger Woods talking about respecting the office of the presidency. And obviously, because there's a lot of vitriol out there towards our present commander-in-chief, there are people that were appalled by what Tiger Woods had to say. I was not one of those people. Although I will openly confess that although the black community's support of Tiger Woods as a golfer is evident because we don't root against him, there is a collective level of disgust due to his unwillingness to recognize his quote-unquote blackness from years ago when he called himself Kablasian or whatever. I think that's what it was. And people had a problem with that. So when you hear him speak on social issues, when you hear him speak on anything other than golf, you kind of have a raised eyebrow towards anything that comes out of Tiger Woods' mouth. That's not to excoriate him as a person. It's to highlight how insulting his depiction of himself was in our eyes. Because if you are black and you're in America, the mentality is that, excuse me, you black no matter what. When you got arrested last year, they put on on that arrest record, you were black. They didn't care about your ancestry. This is how you were classified. And as a result, in most instances, black folks will make the argument, look at how you're treated compared to others. Having said all of that again, I will tell you that Tiger Woods, I agreed with him. You can have an issue with an individual while still respecting the office that they hold. You might feel whatever way you want to feel, but if the president of the United States walked into this studio right now, by virtue of him being the commander in chief, I would need to accord him a level of respect that should be accorded to the commander in chief. Period. I'm not apologizing for it to anybody. I'm not explaining to it to anybody. It is absolutely irresponsible and unprofessional to think otherwise. Now I can attack what he may do, what he has done, or what he may do, but that's entirely different than attacking him, A, and B, you can do so without discrediting and minimizing the office of the presidency of the United States. I happen to believe that. Plain and simple. Now, having said that, I also take issue with this notion that's perpetuated out there. I despise when people are so quick to say ESPN, ESPN, ESPN. Let me say something to all the ESPN competitors out there. Not even competitors, just the critics. You don't work for a company where your views differ from some other people? I can assure you, to all of you out there, the notion that ESPN is some liberal commodity, some paragon of virtue espousing liberalism to the high hills, you couldn't be more mistaken. There are plenty of people who have different points of views. You are listening to one of them. I am liberal about some things. I am conservative about others. And some other things I'm very indifferent to, which would be appalling to both liberals and conservatives. So it's important to point that out. Don't paint everybody with a broad brush. ESPN is far from perfect. It's a phenomenal place to work. And there's a lot of people here that have different points of views. And the speech, the ideology, the beliefs of one doesn't speak for everyone. Point number 2. Point number 3, Jim Brown has made news today because the NFL legend declared Tuesday that the black community, quote, has a responsibility, end quote, to fix its own problems rather than placing the blame on President Trump. In an appearance on Fox and Friends, the former Browns running back called Mr. Trump an exceptional president who genuinely cares about the country, but that he isn't responsible for the black community's troubles. Quote, we should look at ourselves first before we look at the president, Jim Brown, 82 years of age, has said. The black community has a responsibility regardless of what the president does. And if you have a homicide rate within your black community, then it's not the president that's created a homicide rate. It's the black community itself that needs to address it. So I don't want to just put everything on him. And I'm sorry to say that the black community is not doing what we should do, and that includes myself. We have to be able to, as citizens, bring something that the president can join forces with and triple the effectiveness of it, end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to get into the quote about the president being exceptional. The prism of history will judge our president from a politics perspective. There are things that I've seen that I don't like. There are other things that I've seen that I said, that could be interesting. I might like that. His behavior, how I feel about his behavior as a statesman, I think leaves a lot to be desired. That's all I have to say about that. What I have to say about Jim Brown, especially to every black person in America, be careful about how you respond to what this man had to say. Jim Brown is an iconic figure. Whether you agree or disagree with him, he has earned the right to say what he said. He is a man that stood and fought during the civil rights era. So when he speaks about black issues, he's qualified. He is a man that has watched and participated with the progression and the advancement that has taken place in various communities throughout this nation. He is knowledgeable about who the participants were. So when he says there were white folks who participated and helped push forward causes that were beneficial to black America, he has an idea what he's talking about. And when he says that the black community has to look within, where have you heard that before? That is not to absolve anyone from their role in stigmatizing, marginalizing, and minimizing African Americans and minorities in this country. But I'll be damned if the black community gets away with being blameless, because we're not. I'm not going to sit there and look at a bunch of other folks when black on black crime is permeating our society. And in fairness to my community, let me be clear. People usually kill where they are. Hispanics kill Hispanics. Whites kill whites. Blacks kill blacks. So it's not something that is discriminatory towards just black folks. This crime's going on all over the place. But the reality is that when you only make up 13% of the population and killing off one another enables you or regresses you to an endangered species, for crying out loud, there's an elevated level of urgency that gets attached to it with you than it does with other groups of people. So when Jim Brown and others speak on this issue, it's very poignant. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and act and sound like I'm some expert on this. Talk to Joe Madison on Sirius XM Urban View, 6 to 10 a.m. Channel 126. Talk to my girl Karen Hunter and others. But also listen to a Mark Levin speak about it as well, who I listen to as well sometimes. Listen to a Sean Hannity. Get a liberal voice. Get a conservative voice. Get something in between. Get all of that going on. I'm not absolving or ostracizing anybody from this. I'm telling you to go to people who might have more knowledge about this. But you better make sure that you include Jim Brown in that. I don't agree with some of the decisions that Jim Brown has made. I don't agree with some of the rhetoric, some of it, that he has spewed. But I will tell you this. He's been more right than he's been wrong. A. And B, my God, as a sports icon, the one thing you cannot question was his willingness to be a warrior on behalf of our community when it has counted. And if this man stands up and says, we have to look within ourselves and not just look to blame the president, I got to be honest with you. That's a valid point on his part. Regardless of how divisive I believe this president has come across on too many occasions, or how wrong I may think he is on a few issues, and a bit immoral at times, in terms of his language, his speech, his presentation. That doesn't mean that Jim Brown is completely wrong with what he had to say. That's just the truth, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the truth.
Ow. Yep, you guessed it. I'm a speed bump, so I've got one job. I slow you down. So imagine how I feel about Geico, who does way more. Like, not only could they save you money on car insurance, but they've been around for over 75 years, giving people fast and friendly claim service. Ow. Plus, they got a nifty mobile app that gives you 24/7 access. Ow. Just doing my job, buddy.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more. You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Louis Riddick, my NFL insider extraordinaire, he will be on the show with us at the top of the 2 o'clock hour. So looking forward to rapping with him about a few NFL items as well. But until then, we'll get to the call. Let's go to Francesa. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, man? Hello?
Hello.
Francesa, how are you? How are you?
How are you?
How are you doing?
Very nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you as well. Go ahead.
Hey, I've been trying to get through your show for like almost a year.
Well,
I'm like so excited.
You're here. Let's go.
Okay, I actually want to talk to you about Le'Veon Bell.
Okay.
Please explain to me why me as a fan, with all that I see on social media that he's doing to plead his case and not showing up to practice, and he seems to have a dual problem going on. I think he really wants to be a recording artist. He seems to be pretty good at it, but you know,
but Francesa, excuse me for interrupting, but I don't know your point. I mean, what's your issue? What's your problem?
Well, my point is why doesn't he show up for practice? I mean, if you really want to get your deal and be a team player, wouldn't you want to show up to practice to kind of prove that you? Yes, go ahead.
Francesa, let me answer your question. Because he believes he's worth more than they're willing to pay him. And his mentality is that football is such a physical sport. There's plenty of guys that have torn ACLs and ripped up Achilles and stuff like that in practice. Football is a relatively violent sport, and you can compromise your own well-being by going out there devoid of the contract that you covet. Now, in Le'Veon Bell's case, he is universally recognized as one of the top 2 running backs in football over the last 3 years. He's been that sensational. Here's the problem, Francesa. Last year, Le'Veon Bell had 321 carries. He had 85 receptions. That's 406 touches. The last time we saw something comparable to that was when the Dallas Cowboys gave DeMarco Murray 392 carries or something like that, and then said, you know what, he's used up, so we're going to leave him alone and go and get somebody else. Le'Veon Bell is trying to avoid being that kind of guy without getting his money.
Well, I agree. He's a fabulous player. I think the Steelers are lucky to have him, and I think they probably should give him what he got. But wouldn't it be better to, like, really go for talks with the Steelers organization
He did.
instead of airing out your stuff?
He did.
It's like airing out your dirty laundry.
Francesa, with all due respect, you're talking, but you're not listening to me. He did those things. He did have conversations with them. He did have negotiations with them. It's not like he's sitting at home and refusing to talk to him. He's been talking to him. Didn't work out.
I know his latest offer, but I thought his latest offer was about.
I got you.
Wasn't it 14 or 16 million?
No. It was around 15 million or something. He's trying to get 18 million a year because that's what the highest paid running back in football would get. But I've got to go, Francesa. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Let's go to Matt. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Hey, Stephen. Thanks for taking my call.
Go ahead, buddy.
For the Rams, for Aaron Donald, it looks like the Rams are completely in the driver's seat. They don't have anything to lose. That's why they picked up Sue. Why would Donald's team, if he's going to get $80 million guaranteed as well as over $21 million a year, why wouldn't they take that? Because if they take nothing, he doesn't get paid this year. Then next year and the next year after that, he's going to have to be the franchise tag. And then after that, he's going to be 30, and they're not going to pay him at all.
So what are you saying? Why wouldn't Aaron Donald take the money now?
Yeah,
because he thinks there's more to get, and he's probably right. And not only that, Matt, I think that Aaron Donald has the strongest case of them all. He's 27. He's never missed a game. His health has never been a question mark. Neither has his character. Then you take into account the fact that, excuse me, you're the Los Angeles Rams. You take care of Todd Gurley, even though he had 2 years left on his contract. You bring in Ndamukong Suh on a 1-year deal. Marcus Peters had a checkered past. You bring him from Kansas City. Aqib Talib is a bit eccentric. You bring him over from Denver. But somehow, some way, you take care of all of these holes. When you were a playoff team last year, none of them were there outside of Todd Gurley. But Aaron Donald, who you had the same argument with last year, who held out, you didn't take care of him, you didn't pay him. He shows up after training camp, gets right on the field, and what does he do? He becomes Defensive Player of the Year. He has eclipsed J.J. Watt. And you're telling me you can't take care of him, but you took care of all of those other people? I don't blame him for taking his position.
But the NFL has a tradition of once you hit 30, they don't want to pay you. Why would his camp take that risk?
But because they think he's worth it. Why else would they do it, bro? Because they think he's worth it, Matt. You answered your own question. You know that. But I got to go right now. I appreciate the call. Stephon, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Hey, peace and love, Stephen A.
Peace and love. How are you?
I want to talk pretty good, man. I just want to talk a little bit about the whole Jim Brown Trump
Okay, I need you to roll up your window or something because there's too much noise in that background. I want my audience to hear you clearly. Go ahead.
All right. Is that better?
Go ahead, man.
Okay, yeah. In my opinion, like what Jim Brown saying, he thinks black people are waiting on Trump to fix things. I don't think that's the case at all. I think most black people in this country, unfortunately, don't expect much under Trump like they did under Obama or George Bush.
Stop right there. I don't think that's what Jim Brown is saying. I'm not saying you're totally wrong because I don't know definitively, but that's not my interpretation of what Jim Brown said. My interpretation of what Jim Brown said is he's not saying black folks are waiting for the president to fix things. He's saying that black folks are busy blaming the president for problems that existed long before this man ever became president. And that you can't stand around and just point the finger at him and act as if he is the source of all your troubles when you know good and damn well we have this problem in our house that we have not resolved. That's what I interpreted about what Jim Brown has said. And I think that specific element is undeniable.
Now, I agree with you on that point. But I also think, like, to the greater thing right now, which I don't want to say popular, but what's really happening is when you look at not black on black crime, but like the violence regarding police and black people right now.
Okay.
That's going on in the U.S.
Okay.
I think that's something that has obviously existed before Trump entered office, but as commander-in-chief of a country, that's something that you have to actively be able to deal with. And
okay, well, stop right there. I would agree with you that to some degree there are people out there that do appear to be a bit more emboldened in their prejudices, bigotry, or whatever you want to call it since this man has been in office. But when you bring up the analogy that you just brought up, Stephon, when you talk about because he's in office, some of the things that have been transpiring, et cetera, he could have done something about it. Was Barack Obama not in office for 8 years when all of that stuff was going on in Chicago?
No, absolutely. He was there kind of at the height of it.
So what I'm saying, and not only that, on top of it all, he's a junior senator. He was a junior senator from Chicago when you had black folks going on national television calling for martial law to be implemented because it was a state of emergency in the streets of Chicago. He was a junior senator, and I love me some Barack Obama. Please don't get me wrong. But nobody's perfect. No one's right all the time. It is undeniable that the killings that have been taking place for years in the streets of Chicago, one would argue, since you are a junior senator from that area and you were president of the United States, there was more that you could have done. I'm not saying definitively that is the case, but certainly that is the belief that some people had. And it wasn't done. And then you had others who believed the only reason he didn't do it was because his buddy, his former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, was the mayor of Chicago. So when you have that going on and that wasn't addressed or spoken about with the level of fervor that we're getting now, do you understand how people outside the black community, Stephon, can look at us and say, excuse me, isn't that a good point to bring up? And doesn't that validate some of the thing that Jim Brown was saying? What do you say to that? Come on, bro.
I think it's like a thing about perspectives. I see where you're coming from at the same time, but I also feel that regardless of what Trump's situation is, he has to answer to the toll just like every other president has to answer to that toll.
Of course. You're not wrong there. And I'll defend you to the hilt on that, Stephon. You're absolutely right. All I'm saying is you're going to call into the Stephen A. Smith Show. We're going to be real with this. We're going to have a real conversation. And more importantly, we're going to be fair. We're going to be fair-minded. Because, you see, I'm not interested in black appeal. I'm interested in mass appeal. I want blacks, whites, Asian, Hispanics, everybody calling into this show and expressing themselves and knowing that I will be fair. And I'm going to be fair, understanding that the Joe Madisons of the world and many others are incredibly more knowledgeable than me, and I encourage y'all to listen to them too. But I'm also going to encourage you to listen to Mark Levin and even to Sean Hannity to a lesser degree. And I'm going to encourage you to listen to me and know that I'm trying to be fair. That's the most important thing. That's the obligation that I have. And I wouldn't be fair to Jim Brown, the great Jim Brown. And if I'm just going to dismiss his words as if they were out of hand. They weren't. He had a point. But more importantly than that, he was qualified to make it. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show before Louis Riddick comes on the top of the hour in a minute.